and welcome back to today's episode of Crypto. Oh my god, I got some news coverage for you. Let's just dive right into it. Bam! Starting off, we have this big announcement yesterday coming from Bo Hines and the president's working group on digital assets, saying that they will release a 180-day report on July 30th, positioning the U.S. as the leader in cryptocurrency blockchain globally. Now, this is in preparation with, I believe, David Sachs, so we can see like that all in-pod influence. And this is coming out simultaneously with guidance around AI. And remember, AI and blockchain go hand in hand as we do increase our reliance on these digital agents and allowing the digital world to facilitate a lot more of our real world actions, activities. We are going to see them utilizing blockchain for that 24/7, 365, but more fundamentally code-based executable ownership financial layer. So this should be exciting. This should be a boon for the industry and position us in some way to understand a little bit more about what's going on in Washington. Now, to follow suit on that, we are starting to see a positive reaction to the Genius Bill. It does look like its passing has really opened up a door for a lot of people to say, hey, look, this is acceptable now. Now that we have a regulated regime for this, now that we have guardrails or guidelines or however you want to look at it, swim lanes, let's go. Let's dive in. And it's interesting to see things like The Economist, who's traditionally been fairly anti-cryptocurrency, anti-Bitcoin, to say, hey, the world should follow Trump's lead on stablecoins. And the article goes on to actually talk fairly positively about the Genius Bill and the potentials that it opens up. So this is just the beginning. Stablecoins are exploding, being minted on-chain day in, day out. We have Tether's plasma chain rolling out, which is going to be direct competition with, funny enough, Tron from Justin Sun, who does have the most stablecoins issued on chain. So lo and behold, we are actually seeing the realization of the dream of banking the unbanked. While that narrative might be piled deep under a lot of the other things relevant to modern day crypto, if you look at the unbanked population and the capabilities that they can take advantage of via blockchain, we have a resounding success in bringing emerging markets into the modern financial world. And whether that be through direct ownership or sort of, again, these reflections on the stock market, either way, they have this accessibility that was previously unfathomable. And as we know, when financial services are opened up to a populace, it allows for positive growth, for a boom of economic activity, and to create their own businesses. Give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish kind of vibe. So that's all really positive and exciting. If anyone says, why crypto, why blockchain? I mean, there are manifold reasons, but this one's pretty clear cut. Now, one interesting thing going on with all of this activity around Ethereum, we are seeing this exit queue around the validators kind of accrue. The Ethereum price is increasing. There's a lot of people trying to exit the staking queue. Now, what does this mean, right? The staking queue actually increases as the number of participants goes up. So we're now looking at 676,000 ETH looking to unstake, right? This is pumped from, I looked at this just a couple of days. It was at, 8 days. Now it's at 11 days, 18 hours, with the churn being 256 blocks, which is an epoch in Ethereum. And this is indicative of a backup of demand. Basically, each exit requires a certain amount of time. That time is now compounding, and only so many people will be able to exit the staking queue. Now, there's a couple things behind this. One is largely that Justin Sun of Tron did withdraw a ton of Ethereum from Aave. Now, that was probably staked Ethereum that was being looped. So basically, you take that Ethereum, you stake it to a liquid protocol like Lido. You then borrow against that Ethereum on Aave to buy more ETH, you stake that, so on and so forth. So this unwinding of staked assets could be coming from these liquid stake tokens like Lido. It's actually caused a depeg from the ETH price, and this is largely due to this demand and this weight. Not the hugest deal in my opinion. It will repeg, but if you're looking to exit like right now, you are going to eat a percentage of your exit profits by trying to beat out this demand curve. Now, Justin's likely doing that because he wants to put this ETH into a reserve asset treasury company like everyone and their mother is doing, and try to list some company on the stock market. Our exit liquidity in crypto simply isn't enough anymore. You got to move on to the publicly traded markets. But this could also signal a lot of people wanting to sell their ETH. I don't really know. I've heard from OTC desks that borrowing naked Ethereum actually has a fairly high APY right now of around 15%. So it could just be that they want to lend that Ethereum as well, that they're not looking for an exit. But that being said, this is pretty phenomenal given what we've seen recently. I mean, exit queue has generally been an amount of hours, if not a single day, let alone 11 days and 18 hours. Obviously, over 500,000 ETH, quite a lot. So what does this mean for Ethereum, for its price? Hard to say, but there is this congestion activity happening. Now, lastly, I've stayed on top of the Roman storm trial because I do think it's very important. One thing to note is that given everything that's happened on chain, the Tevano tweets that we've followed, the prosecution did get permission to bring in another on-chain analyst. And it's a very strange event because this guy, Stephen George, an IRS trace investigator, he used a model called last in, first out, LIFO. However, one would assume that this makes sense, right? If I send $1 to a wallet and that wallet sends $1, you might assume it's a hop through me. However, many wallets are omnibus accounts. Let's say it's an exchange or an OTC desk, and there's really no way to know that that intermediary is a third-party business. Now, if I send money to a third party, there's no guarantee that just because I send money that the next transaction coming out of theirs is the same funds. There's no way to actually connect the sources in that regard, right? It is almost, in a way, mixing itself, akin to what Tornado Cash was doing. But it's very crazy because we have experts like Tevano coming out and adding this information on Twitter, but this information is being rejected by the judge, by the courts. And this is very strange because they're using these roundabout methods to try to say, hey, Tornado Cash was involved. When, if you do break it down under a real lens of expertise, it's hard to prove beyond the benefit of a doubt that this is indeed the case. There could be intermediaries, there could be a change of ownership. So that kind of throws out the mistrial, and it's rather nutso. Because they did make some attempt to reference the Tevano tweets, and that was rejected as well. So here I just hopped into Tay's account to get the latest and greatest, and it's pretty interesting, right? The question is, and Mr. George, were you aware, Mr. George being one of the tracing analysts, Mr. George, you're aware, aren't you, of a tweet that occurred over the weekend from an individual named Tevano? So this got brought up in court. Answer, I'm not. Mr. Mosley, objection and prosecution. I'll ask if he's aware, but that's it. The witness, I'm not aware of the tweets. Thank you. And they go on to say, Mr. Mosley did send an email with a link to what I saw was x.com. Did you open it? I did not open it, Your Honor. Fine, move on. And that was in reference to the long thread that went over the tracing accounts and basically proving that this capital did not go into Tornado Cash. So very strange to reject expert witnesses. However, that has been the foundation of this case from the entire time. They rejected expert on-chain witnesses, really relying only on Chainalysis, which works with the US government and is very much a suspicious actor. But, you know, Tay goes on to say, I'm very concerned that the courts, these AUSAs prosecuting crypto crime, and the IRS do not understand the difference between using last in, first out to, one, establish the amount of assets that flowed through a very limited set of known parties and a very limited set of their known accounts, tracing $148,000 through 10 unattributed wallets on the blockchain, each of which did somewhere between 4 million in volume and 1.5 billion in volume to establish that the last wallet in the chain received the victim's funds and then sent out the victim's funds to Tornado Cash. What she's saying, again, is that this could be a trading desk. If they're doing 4 million in volume, 1.5 billion in volume, right, not holdings, this means they're probably facilitating transfers through an omnibus account through a variety of participants. So how can you say that just because the known wallet was traced to this account that we don't break the assets off from that point, right? Maybe the OTC desk then sent money that belonged to somebody else to a completely separate account. That account sends it to Tornado Cash, but you cannot piece together that these things are, you know, originated from the same exploit that they were discussing, the woman who was fished in this pig butchering scam. So it is disheartening. It is very important, again, to the First Amendment rights, to the capacity to code, to what we can contribute to open source. And we really do want to push people towards open source in this age of AI. It's very important that we globally understand what's happening in these new massive systems that are not only capable of surveillance, but obviously finance and everything that we do and interact with in our life. This is something that continues to unfold. We'll have to see how the jury comes out of this. A lot of the prosecution's points seem very weak, but they did only bring on a jury of really gray-haired, older-aged people who might get very lost in the actual meat of these conversations. Hard to say. Best of luck to Roman Storm. And with all that being said, the market's, it's not quite as pumping as it was, but we get volatility and everything. Stay safe out there. That is why I say don't over leverage in one direction or the other. And of course, I will see you tomorrow.